Hello and welcome to this week's news. So, a lot has been happening this week, and a lot of it is really fucking bad, so let's get right onto the first news story. I'm sorry about it being kind of unprofessional, because I'm sick. So blame the illness, not me. Okay. So, after 10 hours, 12 hours of debating over seemingly nothing, since we know fucking nothing about the plan of action or anything like that, Britain is now at war with ISIS, and it doesn't really make any sense. There's no real aims. I mean, supposedly Hilary Benn has made a really good fucking speech or something, which is really stupid. I watched it and it isn't that good. It's just a bunch of bloody warmongers trying to put off a speech as good because they want to go to war with Syria. It's really silly. But he's seemingly trying to become the next Labour leader. He only convinced about 66 people within Labour, which were the staunch Blairites in the first place, to come onto his side for the war. Really, he's kind of a disgrace to his father, who is the great Tony Benn. He was he was in the Blitz, where England basically got bombed by the Germans. And he lived through that, and then he didn't want to bomb any other people ever, because it is a terrible experience. So that's one of his main things, and his son's just gone against it. There was also a slight uprising in the Tories, which is quite unexpected because they weren't given a free vote, whereas Labour were, and only 16 people voted against the war within the Tory party. But I reckon there'd be more if there was an open election. There was open vote, a free vote. Okay, so obviously there was the mass rebellion from Labour. 66 MPs voted against Corbyn's mandate. Already the first bomb sites have been attacked, and they were oil bays, which shows that maybe it's more motivation to get oil than to protect Britain and stabilise Syria. I mean, this is what it seemed like in the Iraq War, and all the Gulf Wars, as the Americans would call them. And then the second lot of bombings is currently occurring in the time that I am in now, so I don't know that much about them, but I know that they've sent off the RAF jets at this moment in time. To comment on the whole thing, I reckon I agree with people such as John Kerry, he said that basically, if a ceasefire occurred, that IS would be gone in months, like if a ceasefire between the Civil War. However, I don't really think that you'd need any outside nations to help, because the bombing has already been done by America, by France, by Turkey, by everybody in the region, and yet they've not stopped anything. It's still in mass disarray. Even more so than when they started bombing, actually, because in the last year, ISIS has gained mass territory. Although a lot of it is countryside, but they have still gained mass territory. Okay, so a very sad event, just as sad as the Syrian conflict. San Bernardino shooting, in which 14 were killed and 17 have been 17 have been hospitalized. The director of the FBI, James Comey, is treating it as terrorism, which might make you think that school shootings will now be seen as terrorism, and stuff like that will be seen as terrorism, because they are terrorism, they are acts of terror. But the perpetrators were not white, and therefore they are seen as religious extremists, because they worship Islam, they are Muslims. Whereas if they were Christians, it would just be, oh, yeah, they were just mentally unstable. But no, because it's somebody who is part of the Islamic faith, it's extremism. That's the way that it works these days. So Jeb has came out saying that he will be willing to support Trump because anybody is better than Hillary Clinton. That's the direct quote. Anybody is better than Hillary Clinton. I'm not so sure that Trump is better than anything, even like a slug. I'd rather have a slug as president than Trump. But, I guess Jeb just loves Hitler. President Dilma Rousseff of Brazil is to be impeached for corruption. He has basically been paying off people, like giving bribes and accepting them, and obviously these bribes have been causing mass capitalist regime to destroy the entirety of the people. There's mass rising unemployment and surging consumer prices, which obviously, I mean, correlation does not equal causation, but correlation equals causation in this case. Okay, NATO has been planning growth, on top of the fact that everybody is saying that this ISIS war will start World War III, which it won't, because it's just a load of nations attacking one enemy. It's like the opposite, if anything. But NATO expanding probably will, because NATO has been a thorn in the backside of Russia for too long at this point. They've been sending nuclear weapons to survey, nuclear weapons on planes and stuff to survey Russia, just in case war breaks out. And this is quite recently. This was after the Ukraine being taken over. So, I mean, really, this is the stupidest thing that NATO could do. But then again, NATO are basically just an empire at this point. They're just dastardly imperials, really. But Russia are no better, let's be honest. Russia versus America. Who wins? Who gives a shit? They're both shit anyway. Just hope the rest of the planet doesn't get destroyed along the way. So Labour have won 2 seats in the by-election, which are seen as the seats that they need to win, which is Oldham West and Royton. And they've completely obliterated the increase in UKIP votes, which is immense, because UKIP were the main people who took votes from Labour. Like the SNP, yeah, they took seats, but they didn't take votes. The votes that UKIP took were in all the marginals, and therefore, because of the fact that they're taking the votes in the seats which Labour will need to win, it's not going to let them win. They're basically destroying the Labour competition. But now UKIP are being destroyed by Labour again, and that is probably because Corbyn, likened to Farage, is a normal guy, as most people think. However, these are similar events in 2011 when Miliband won Oldham East and Saddlesworth. It's funny how it's Oldham East and Oldham West, and they did have a mass majority there too. However, I am saying that UKIP were not around then. UKIP are the main reason that Labour won, is my personal opinion, but yeah, UKIP are the main reason that Labour lost and Tories won. Because the Tories don't actually have that many voters who would go to UKIP, and where they do, it's in the safe seats, not in the marginals. Because the marginals say, oh, fuck, Tories are better than UKIP at least, and Labour aren't going to win. And Labour voters are all working class, and so they want a normal working class guy who they seemed to think Nigel Farage was. Although it's now all come out that he definitely isn't, and he wasn't in the first place. He never has been. Nobody ever really thought he was. It's just because he could balance a fucking pint on his head. So, other terrible news. Junior doctors have been warning that the new privatisation contracts could destroy the NHS, could just completely disassemble it and privatise it. Which is true. I mean, you can't say no to that. It's true. They are saying the truth. These are people who are working in the profession, and they are seeing it happen. It's a thing that's happening. Okay, into the next section. Remember the victims. The workers of the Syrian oil bays and all those in Syria that are going to be bombed soon. The 14 killed and 17 injured at San Bernardino shooting. Victims of the worst Indian flood in 100 years. It's pretty terrible. There's just an Indian flood that everyone's ignoring. Okay, so on to the next section. We don't have much this week, so I'm just kind of talking more than I do normally. Yeah. Just move on. Hope. Ibrahim Bayzed, a Syrian refugee who came over to Greece in 2012, has returned to Greece to volunteer on Tilos, which is an island that's basically become a welcoming centre for refugees because it's closer to the kind of Mediterranean than Greece itself is. A new hashtag on Twitter has allowed the Indians that are caught in the flood to take refuge in homes nearby, because people in their homes have been tweeting, "My home is open, come," and just take refuge here, basically. So that's been saving quite a lot of people, which is quite good. Anonymous couple in Minneapolis, have donated $500,000, to the Salvation Army Kettle Fund. And although Salvation Army are bigots, they are terrible people. Not a good charity and never have been. It's good that people are just doing this kind of stuff. I mean, maybe they did it in knowing that Salvation Army were bad, but I don't feel like they did. research allows us to know how Alzheimer's now properly works, like how it affects the neurons in your brain, the relapses and such, which means that we can do a lot more treatment-wise. We can hopefully maybe cure it even, because knowing how something works is the first way to mastering it, really, isn't it? Shlomo Reshnitz has been feeding troops at Shannon Airport, costing £20,000. Dollars, sorry. I keep saying pounds when it's dollars. It's less pounds, less in pounds. Anybody who's English and watching, it is not £20,000. It's more like 17,000 probably. Mark Zuckerberg, this is an item. I've made the first ever item to the Hope section, and he's definitely worthy of it. So he's donated 20 million to a public school internet fund. So basically, he just wants to get everybody on the internet. Well, that's a good thing, really, for him, isn't it? But the next part really isn't. His child being born very recently has spurred him to donate 99% of Facebook stocks to charity. That is really fucking massive. Like, you think of Bill Gates as this really charitable guy, but he only gives about 20%, so to charity. He still has billions back in his bank. So Mark Zuckerberg giving away 99% of his Facebook stocks is massive. Okay, on to the last section. There still isn't much here either, and I don't have, sadly, any standouts for rock, which means there probably won't be an intro music, unless I decide to just put one in from one of the other ones. So the Courteniers have released Concrete Love, which is very bouncy pop rock. It's not as good as some of their other stuff, but it's decent. Matanza have released Pure Sonorio Posible, and it's very good rhythmic with deep lyrics and Spanish rock. It's really, really good. Definitely would say go listen to that. The lyrics sound kind of like pirate metal lyrics, if you've ever heard that, like in the timbre, not in the actual fucking lyrics, the vocals, sorry. Menace Beach have released Holidays Are Heavy and Rat's World. Holidays Are Heavy is the single, and Rat World is an album. This is very recently after they've already released an album. And it's slightly lo-fi locals with nasal quality, featuring a harmonic female vocalist on top of a toned-down rock, which is what they normally do. It's really good. Definitely go listen to those if you like Menace Beach. Blood Red Shoes, these guys are a really good band. They've released Tied at the Wrists early recordings, which is basically just recordings that they haven't yet released and were from the early days. And this is, I'm pretty sure it's going to promote the next album that comes out. They're just doing this to do something before they go on tour and stuff. But yeah, it's pleasantly post-hardcore in some parts, because when they first started they were quite post-hardcore. Hardcore being emotional hardcore, which is the origins of emo, which is very strange because at this point emo is people like Halsey and fucking 21 Pilots. But things change, and most of it is Bristol indie, which is just a specific sound of indie rock. It's very good. Definitely say go listen to it if you like indie rock, because Bristol have great indie rock. And it's a good compilation album from a great band. So Jethro Tull has released Too Old to Rock and Roll, Too Young to Die. It's very Genesis/Queen-like, but with more orchestral kind of sounds, flutes, whistles, brass and that. And it works really well together. I'd definitely say it's surprised to actually see that there. Go listen to it if you like good old 80s rock. Pop. I've only got two here, and one of them is a standout, luckily. Foxtrot have released A Taller Us, which is electrophonically infused pop with rampant sampling. I really, really like it. I was really surprised that something this good just kind of came along without me noticing for a minute. But yeah, onto the standout. They Might Be Giants is Why. This is right after the release of, what was it? I can't remember the names of their albums, but they released Nanobots, and then they released some compilation albums, and then they were releasing dial-a-songs very, very often, and then they released them in an album, and I'm guessing they're releasing, well, this is the next lot of the dial-a-song songs. Dial-a-song songs, that didn't work as well. But yeah, it's simple experimental 90s pop with ultimately catchy and somber tunes throughout. You will most likely know them. They made the song Istanbul. You know, Istanbul, not Constantinople. Yeah? And also... what else is a really famous song that they've done? Oh, just leave it at that. You'll probably know Istanbul. I mean, my rendition wasn't that good. Just look it up. But yeah, it's basically educational music without getting smart. That's what I described it as. And that is the end of the video. So I hope you all have a really good week. And I hope nobody else is as ill as me, because it's terrible. I don't like being ill. Alright.
A sua homem agora vem pra mim. Mas se essa assinatura é sua homem vem pra mim.